and to imply that we should just ignore the impact that Caitlin Clark had on this team, this league, this sport. Nah, it doesn't work that way.
That's right. Sue Bird, once a supporter of Caitlin Clark, called out Stephen A. Smith and claimed the WNBA is doing just fine without her. But with Clark possibly heading to Europe and current numbers telling a different story, Sue's claim doesn't hold up.
Has been impacting the WNBA well before this year. This is not a new thing. Sure. This is, and in that way, I do think Caitlin's being used as a pawn. Caitlin didn't bring systems to the WNBA. This has been happening, and that I think is what's been such a shock for all.
Sue may have defended Caitlin before, but now it seems she's done. Clark's absence has sparked backlash online. Fans want her back, and many are already turning away from the WNBA.
Numbers with Caitlin Clark are astronomical. She is a big draw. She brings in all the things. And yes, the games where she's not playing have lower viewership. But in the WNBA playoffs are still breaking records from previous WNBA years.
The facts don't lie. Without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA is sliding back down to reality. Every game played since she stepped away has seen viewership drop. Fans are leaving. Yet Sue Bird insists that Caitlin's time off won't hurt the league at all. That's just ignoring what's right in front of us.
I don't want it to grow if it's certain people at the face. And there is still this undertone of jealousy that for some reason I cannot get around calling it anything else but that, because I don't know what else it could be. I thought it was going to get better this season, but it hasn't. There are still people who seemingly, to me, feel like they just don't want Caitlin to be a...
Rachel D.A. nailed it. Some WNBA legends don't want the game to grow if Caitlin Clark is the face of it. They'd rather rewind to square one than face the real competition she brings. What's the problem, Sue? We all know.
Problem, Sue Bird. I know that you gave her props and you acknowledged how phenomenal she was in terms of a draw. What Shannon Sharp and I were guilty of saying was that not enough folks were appreciating.
Caitlin Clark's time in the WNBA was nothing short of game-changing. The moment she left the playoffs, it felt like the league lost its heartbeat. Now, with talks of her heading to Europe, the WNBA could be facing serious trouble. Sue Bird, a true legend, was once one of Caitlin's biggest fans. She openly praised Clark, calling her a player who could change the game forever. From the start, Bird saw Caitlin not just as a rookie, but as a force ready to revolutionize women's basketball.
Moved home games to bigger arenas when Indiana came to town to accommodate more fans. I'm not finished. Attendance for the entire league is up nearly 50% this year, and Indiana leads all teams with an average attendance of 17,035, up 319% from a year ago.
Things took an unexpected turn when Sue Bird started downplaying Caitlin Clark's impact, surprising many, especially since she had previously praised Clark so highly. Suddenly, Bird claimed that Clark's presence hadn't really moved the needle on WNBA viewership, despite all the evidence showing otherwise. She suggested the league's recent struggles weren't connected to Clark's absence, leaving fans confused and even angry. Many couldn't understand why someone who once championed Clark would now minimize her influence. On the other hand, Stephen A. Smith remained a fierce supporter of Clark. Known for his blunt and fearless commentary, Smith didn't hesitate to speak out when Clark left the playoffs. He was clear and direct, saying her absence completely ruined the playoff excitement and hype. For Smith, Clark wasn't just a star player, she was the heartbeat of the league, and without her, the WNBA just isn't the same.
The ratings aren't the same with Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever now eliminated. Game 1 of the Aces Liberty matchup on Sunday drew an average of 929,000, was down nearly 50% from last Sunday's Fever Sun contest. By the way, not only was viewership down.
For Stephen A. Smith, this wasn't just about one player leaving the court, it was about the WNBA losing its biggest attraction. He highlighted the massive drop in viewership since Caitlin Clark's exit and stressed that the league needed to wake up and realize how crucial she was to their success. Smith wasn't just sharing an opinion, he was sounding the alarm. According to him, the WNBA must do more to uplift stars like Clark and keep the momentum alive, but Sue Bird wasn't having any of it. She fired back publicly at Smith, insisting he was wrong to blame the playoff viewership decline solely on Clark's absence. Bird argued the drop was due to many factors, and that the playoff hype wasn't tied to just one player, no matter how talented. This clash sparked a fiery debate across the WNBA community. On one side, Stephen A. Smith stood firm that Caitlin Clark was the driving force behind the playoff excitement. On the other, Sue Bird, a true legend of the game, insisted the WNBA was bigger than any single player, even someone as impactful as Clark.
Bird calls out ESPN host for, quote, hating on WNBA playoff ratings after Caitlin Clark's exit. You see what?
A lot of this noise came by people that were sitting on this network. They tried to minimize her, said, well, you giving her all this credit. What about the women that came before her? What the women came before her, what they did cannot be taken away. That ain't got nothing to do with Caitlin Clark. But there was a lot of people tried to make sure they keep Caitlin Clark in her place, because what you're doing, if you give her all this shine, you minimize what they done. We saw the ratings, we saw the merchandise sales, we saw the attendance, but y'all want to make it about.
Sue Bird didn't stop at just challenging Stephen A. Smith. She doubled down on her stand, outright refusing to admit that Caitlin Clark's absence was the primary cause of the WNBA's viewership decline. Even as ratings plummeted sharply after Clark's exit, Bird remained adamant that the downturn in interest wasn't all about Clark. This refusal to acknowledge what many call the Caitlin Clark effect left countless fans frustrated and disappointed. After all, the numbers didn't lie. Viewership had spiked significantly whenever Clark was on the court, and it dropped just as noticeably once she was no longer playing. Suggestions that there were other reasons for the decline didn't sit well with those who had been closely following the playoffs. Fans pointed out that the excitement and energy surrounding the games noticeably faded after Clark's departure, and it was nearly impossible to ignore the clear correlation between her leaving and the sharp drop in ratings. But despite all this, Bird continued to hold her ground, refusing to give Clark the credit many believed she deserved, deepening the divide and sparking heated debate among fans and analysts alike.